So yeah, man, another loss, another loss. We've now lost five, count them, five in a row. This team could really use a Larry Martin. No, not nothing like that. Are you crazy? Danny Ainge would never. He didn't accept our very generous offer of Moses Moody and protected picks for him. Well, like, what makes you think that he would even want to part ways with him? So yeah, the Warriors lose another game. Yet another game in which they held a double-digit lead, and it seems like we are slowly resorting back to the team of last season. It just took a longer time for it to happen. Last year, it was after the first 8 games, because that was when we went 6-2, and then we came back home and lost, I believe it was either 5 or 6 home games in a row. So from 6-2 to 12-3. Andrew Wiggins, sort of inconsistent. I mean, he's not really to blame for the actual losing streak. He has played fantastic this season, just in totality. There's not really much that you can say about him other than just him being somewhat inconsistent on some nights, but even then, that's not really the main issue with this team. Steph Curry, 8 for 23, and it's becoming more and more obvious that, yes, you don't want to have a 37-year-old, soon to be 37-year-old, as the primary source of offense on your team that's full of people that can't create their own shot. Let's go through this timeline real quick. So, at the start of the season, and more specifically in the off-season, a lot of people's main concern was the lack of a reliable second scoring option next to Stephen Curry. And we've had that concern pretty much since we traded Jordan Poole. And even while we had him, because he wasn't necessarily reliable in certain situations. He had a playoff run in which he had more single-digit scoring games than he had double-digit scoring games. So the reliability factor was out the window, but of course you can attribute that to other miscellaneous factors, mainly the one being that his own teammate punched him in the face. So you trade him. Then you get Chris Paul, which I feel like a bunch of people at the time were under the assumption that would be some sort of salary move, moving Chris Paul's contract to some team in order to get a different player, just, with the money matching for a player that at the time you could say was slightly more valuable, at least, for the money, because Jordan Poole was unproven. He had now had this down year, and you're about to pay him $30 million, whoever, wants to take him. And you have Chris Paul, who is being paid around the same amount of money. It's just different situations. And so you make that move, and then you make it clear that this is the plan. We're gonna have Chris Paul run the team, or run a lot of our lineups, which, I mean, started out fine, but then as the season went on, as Draymond started crashing out, backhanding dudes in the face, your team kind of fell apart. And of course, that is a huge part of why your team fell apart, but it was also the factor of you didn't have a reliable scorer outside of Steph. Steph would have so many games where he was just off ball, trying to, run the offense, trying his best to make sure everybody at least gets involved in some way, shape, or form, which wasn't really working out. And then you have him coming back into the fourth quarter and just putting on a scoring clinic for basically every fourth quarter that he played, and that's why he won Clutch Player of the Year. You have that entire season of just doing that, a season in which 2 of your starting 5 were benched at some point during the season. Of course, Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson, simply because they were just playing so badly. You play through that entire season, living through that, and then you get to this offseason. You have several opportunities. I will not fault you for not taking the Paul George contract and taking Paul George on your basketball team. I will not fault you for not doing that, even though I do think that it would have been a better fit for him overall than what he is in Philly right now. It still would have been overpay, and there's no telling what would be the result of that. You say no to that. Okay. Chris Paul was on an expiring contract, or not an expiring contract, a non-guaranteed contract, and you had an opportunity to get off of that contract in return for another really good player in Zach LaVine. Now, Zach LaVine at the time was seen as sort of an overpay. With how well he's played this season, I feel like most people would agree that that was probably a mistake, even though he would still be probably an overpay at, I believe, $46 million this season. It would be a lot better to have him on this roster, especially next to someone like Steph that can create a whole bunch of space for him, than what they have right now, averaging 22 points, 51 from the field, 43 from three. So pretty much almost back to peak Zach LaVine in like 2021 when he was averaging 27 a game on basically the same splits. You have that opportunity in front of you. You're concerned with the health and long-term reliability of Zach LaVine. So you say, actually, no, even though the Bulls are just asking for Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins, I don't want to do that. I'm going to just send Chris Paul into free agency. Just real quick, I actually got this deal wrong. It was actually worse than you're thinking right now. It was Chris Paul or Andrew Wiggins, or not and. So yeah, back to the video. You signed Buddy Hield, you signed Kyle Anderson, signed D'Anthony Melton, and here we are. What do we do? What do we do here? What do we do? I don't want to be like, oh, I was right, because at the end of the day, if I was wrong about this team, that means that they are succeeding. Here's where it all went wrong, I would say. Up 11 with 6 minutes left, double-digit lead. Oh, man. How many times have we heard that? The out-of-bounds turnover, which is absolutely insane. All right, so pick and roll. Ideally, you would want to hit TJD on the roll right here. It's a pretty simple pass to make. Westbrook is not really, he's not going to leap that high anymore. He's old. Christian Braun is really the only threat here. So while I do understand the read that he was trying to make in Christian Braun collapsing and making the skip pass to Wiggins, I would probably like to just see that lob, because like TJD can finish that, at least if it's a dunk. This year with layups, he has been awful. That's just an awful pass. This I don't really have a crazy issue with. These are the types of shots that he was hitting last season, but these are not the shots that he has been hitting this year. He's been hitting a lot of like standstill catch and shoot type of threes, and even then he hasn't even been hitting that many. I mean, that's not really like this. That is something that should never ever happen, and I'm so confused as to what is actually going on here. Why is he matched up with Jokic? So TJD points, I believe, to Wiggins for a switch, and I don't think that Pod sees him do that because he's so like just focused on trying to get the closeout and trying to get the contest. That was a sequence that kind of led to the chain reaction that got the Nuggets back in the game. Just because they had like started building momentum at that point, we just couldn't hit shots. And that's been a theme throughout the entire like last calendar year. Wow. What's Buddy Hield been doing lately? Y'all winning games when he looked like a superstar. Yeah, Buddy actually hasn't been playing that well. He hasn't been shooting that well. Like in this stretch, he was averaging 22 points, shooting 50% from three on 9 attempts a game. In the last 7 games after that, he's now averaging 11 points, shooting 39% from three. So still a really good 3-point shooter. And that's really all he's taking. That's why his field goal percentage is so low. But you would like to see more out of him. But at the end of the day, Buddy Hield is not the reason why we are consistently losing games now. We can't have a situation in which we are relying on Buddy Hield averaging 20 points, shooting 50% from three. That can't happen. We can't be in a situation where that's what we're relying on to be winning games. If you disagree with that, I guess that's just my opinion. That's another thing. We cannot hit layups. We cannot make free throws. The 2 easiest shots in the game. We talked. They told us the entire offseason about, oh, we're shooting threes. We're like we can shoot. We can shoot. We can shoot. Is that all they were doing? Nobody can hit a layup and nobody can hit a free throw. We're 70% at the free throw line. We are last place by over 3%, or almost 3%. We are 70% as a team. Now, I will say, Andrew Wiggins has really picked up his free throw shooting recently, and I do appreciate that. He's shooting, I believe, like 84% in his last 5 games, which was a huge concern really the entire time that he's been here. So we'll see if that actually holds up. Andrew Wiggins is all the way up to 78% now. Moses Moody, 76%. Brandon Pajemski, 75%, which is, I believe, better than last season. Kyle Anderson, 61%. Draymond Green, 60%. Jonathan Kuminga, 59%. Trace Jackson Davis, 57%. Like, if you're someone like Jonathan Kuminga, who is living in the paint and living for like opportunities attacking going downhill, and you can't hit your free throws, what are we doing? We've now lost 5 in a row. We are now the 7th seed in the West. We are now that with 5 losses in a row. Now with Draymond with a calf issue that we don't know what is going on there. We don't know how like that's going to affect him. We don't know how long he's going to be even out for, or even perhaps what he's going to look like when he does come back. Houston, Minnesota, and now Houston. This is the game where if we were to win this game, we would go to Vegas and compete for the actual Cup championship. And then after we come back from that, we go to Memphis, then go to Minnesota, then back home to Indiana, then the Lakers on Christmas, then back to LA for the Clippers, then Phoenix, Cleveland, Philly, Memphis, Sacramento. Every game from here to here is just straight playoff teams every single night. There's no telling what this team is going to look like a month from now. And I am, frankly, kind of worried. But I knew not to get too optimistic with this team.